canopies inside inner walls, and everything looks pretty run down. Definitely a desert city. Cool.
Yeah.
Borderlands, great game. Next shot we got, I really have no idea where it is. We got kind of a lone tree, some waterfalls. Looks to be a desert setting with the warm tones.
Now this is one of the ones that I think is just sort of more detail of Caldeum, or it's just an environmental transition, a bit more of the world, because we are going to be moving from one geographic area to another, and it sounds like we're actually going to be passing through those transitions instead of it just happening during cutscenes. You're in the Rogue Monastery, and then fade to black. Oh, now you're in the desert.
Right.
Take a ride in my caravan. What?
There's candy in the back.
Yeah, only if that caravan is white and has candy.
Free candy, spray painted on the side.
You only get a ride if you kill Andy.
Geed just suddenly is not as wholesome as I thought he was.
Where can I take you?
I think I'll walk. I'm good. I don't need a ride. But yeah, you bring up an interesting point. We didn't have very many transitional states in Diablo 2. It's just pretty much one area, take a ship or take a caravan onto another.
Yeah, and part of that was the limitation of the engine. It could only have so many art assets. Like the tile set was loaded, and it built the world off of the modular tile set, so there wasn't really room for a whole lot of transitional elements in the engine. But they don't have that limitation anymore, so there we go.
So going on to Diablo 3, do you think it'll change and we'll have many more transitional states and areas to explore? Because they have this nice world map that they created for the Diablo 3 website, which I'll throw up. I actually didn't download the image, but it actually maps out all the areas, and there's a lot of areas we haven't explored and haven't been to. So it really
I think there's still going to be some large gap fade to black transitions, just because of the nature of the game. It is going to be fairly linear ultimately,
right?
So you can afford to have that kind of fade to black in your narrative. But I think we are at the very least just going to see more transitions in environment type. We are going to get, okay, you were in the mountains and then you move into the plains, or you move from plains into desert, or desert into city, into oasis, rather than just having any kind of environment transition be extremely limited, because it was a byproduct of just the way that Diablo 2 and Diablo 1, they used similar algorithms for building the actual world itself.
Right.
That was based on tiles, and those tiles, you could only have so many of them loaded into the system at once, which is why there's so many repeating things. They do a great job of hiding it. Mm-hmm. But that's what it's loading when you go through and you see the door opening and the loading bar, is it's flushing out the old tiles and loading in the new ones and constructing the world from randomly from those. With the 3D engine, the way, from what I've seen from all of the gameplay, and I would love to talk with one of their engineers and confirm this, but what I suspect is rather than being tiles, it's going to be, it's still going to be tiles conceptually, but it's going to be much larger chunks. So it'll be a room instead of just, okay, well, here's a
cinder
1
block.
inch by 1 inch block of dirt.
Right.
And it's also important to note, and we see here in the chat here, could be like, wow, show the entire area but not release it until the DLC or expansion. One thing that I would make a separation in, that because this is an action RPG game, any kind of transitional points probably will be able to skip any animation that would occur, simply because it is a fast-paced game. That was one of the principal beauties of any of the Diablo games. You just click in a waypoint and you're all the way across the world. There was no, I'm going to hitch a taxi ride like in WoW and, wait for 15 minutes to fly across the landscape.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
I think he was
nev-
more comparing it to, when WoW original came out, we had kind of that map with the two kingdoms, and then there was, I think, a third area up. And as they release more expansions, they just expand on the map and open up new areas. So Diablo 3, we have this nice, beautiful world map with everything laid out, but I don't think we'll see every single area when Diablo 3 gets released. Now, expansions, I'm hoping we get to see more, and I'm pretty sure that's what we'll do. Now, if we get to see all of them, that's iffy, because there are quite a lot of places noted on that map.
I would say probably not, just given how big the map is and the fact that it's not an MMO. Because it is a linear game, you're only going to get to visit the places that you actually have some significance in the area.
Stop killing my dreams!
Well, it's the old D&D instinct. You're a DM, you're going to be doing this game, and so you're building a world and you map out the entire world and you make all of these cities and you talk about them and you make notes about them, and then the players never visit them. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because knowing what's on the other side of that mountain range and having a map of what's on the other side of that mountain does create a more lush and vivid world. If a player asks me as the DM, like, oh, well, what happens if we go west? Well, if you go west, eventually you'll come to the deserts of endlessness and you'll see this and that and that. And I think that world building instinct is very much going to be in the, well, world building team of Diablo 3. So they're going to want to map out the entire world, regardless of whether or not it has any impact on the narrative. So saying that, oh, they're just going to show it and then they'll release it in expansion packs because they're greedy is a little bit backhanded and underhanded and wrong-minded, because they want to build an entire world, and to say, well, they've put it on the map, they need to take us there now. Well, that's ham-handed. That's forcing the narrative to go places just because you drew them on the map. Regardless, they don't necessarily make sense. It doesn't make sense for us to go to the far north now, like when we should be going back to Chaldeum. The problem's in Chaldeum. Why are we going north? Well, because we drew it on the map, and you've got to find a reason for the character to go all the way up north.
Yeah, I would hate to be playing a video game where you see like the world map on, on our world, and it's like, okay, we gotta go to Antarctica now. I know all of you hate it, but it's on the map. It's on the map.
Well, I don't think it's more of a greed thing saying, hey, look, now we have more new areas that you called for. We put it on the map, so we have to take you there. It's just, I don't know, a way to expand more gameplay. They could always work into the story, something happens up in this area. But from what we've seen of Diablo 3, it takes place in, mainly Tristram, the cathedral, the area around where the crater hits. So who knows if they open up different storylines for the expansion to where you go to these different areas. And I'm not saying you have to go to every place on the map because it's on the map. There's ways to work that into the story without you having to go there. Having characters that talk about there, or people who have moved from one area to another who have stories of what's going on up there. That paints a vivid picture in your mind, and it conveys the point across without you having to go there. I mean, it's the whole immersion thing. I love Harry Potter books, and the reason I think they're written so well is because she truly has built an entire world. She'll throw little hints in there that a world does exist and has existed for a long time, like bringing up old case files when they're trying to save the Hippogriff. In book 3, they bring up the point that a manticore back in the day got off trial, but everyone was too afraid of it, so that's a mistake. It paints this picture of a manticore back in the day that was on trial, and it opens up that world a little more and expands your mind to not just in the present, this is what's happening, very limited. It stretches it out through just a subtle small hint. It helps you build the world in your mind and get you a clearer picture.
And we can certainly see how it's expanded over time just comparing Diablo 1 versus Diablo 2. Went to a lot more places, we got an idea of what was going on with the world, and here with Diablo 3 we have a lot of areas that, we may or may not actually see. Might end up never visiting the Dreadlands or Xenasai or any of these places like Skosklin, but they're there.
And we'll probably hear stories about them.
Yeah,
just
I would love to
really-
hear
really
a lot more about
Badly hope we go back to Kurost so I can fight some more of those exploding Stygian dolls. Those
Bastards.
Yeah.
But there should be
yeah.
an entire expansion just around fighting those guys.
Diablo 3 Stygian doll.
Well, they can even play it out like in StarCraft. It's like, I'm going back to Kurost to get the job done.
it. Nice. I found it really funny, though, if you think about it in Act 4, where you actually see those variants of the name, the witches in hell that are flesh spawners and all that, and you're thinking, these aren't really as bad as the exploding dolls. They're just a factory around here somewhere? They're just making dolls? What's going on here? It's interesting how they recycle names. And you see a real branch from one place to another as far as the mythology is concerned, like a crossbow in Diablo 2. You pick it up and it's like, okay, that's kind of lame. By Hell mode, you see a Gorgon crossbow, and a lot of people might not know what that is. Well, Gorgon is from Greek mythology, the most famous of which was Medusa. So as you start to really immerse yourself in a lot of these very well-known concepts, and even some of the lesser-known ones, you kind of get a good feel for all of the different things that they could really do with it.
Yep. Going to be exciting. Next piece of concept art looks to be in Borderlands. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, and this looks along the same vein of all the concept art on the Diablo 3 Borderlands page. In the desert, little desert fortress rundown.
Does anyone look at this this picture and think Aladdin?
Oh, totally.
Myself,
Yeah.
I bet you anything, Osama bin Laden's in one of those holes.
Yeah.
Capture Osama as a side quest.
Pretty sure.
Nice.
Maybe it's
Oh.
one of their little what do you call them? Cookies or whatever.
Easter egg?
Yeah, Easter eggs. So I knew it was some Easter egg. Little Osama head pops out of a hole in the desert. Hello.
Certainly be pretty epic. I like the water fountain off to the side too. It's a nice touch.
Yeah, it gives a good little contrast. A water fountain in the shade.
Kinda
The
makes you
water
wonder
is too
about-
happy.
It's too colorful.
I think
Should be.
I think
of some kind.
if you lived in the desert, water would always be happy. It wouldn't even matter if a monsoon was heading your way. Water would always be happy.
Man, you can really tell by these images that folks at Blizzard doing art really know their stuff. Converging lines, good contrast. Sorry, getting sidetracked here. Let's move on to the next picture, shall we? This one is an image of the
Absolutely.
desert. Very desert themed.
This one's
time.
cool.
Got some camels, some little traveling pack of merchants or three kings. Who knows?
They're all
Knows
gonna
what?
die.
And now this is the where we see this concept art used is in the background for the Borderlands. So this is their official big panoramic of the Borderlands environment.
Very desolate,
Yeah, except you can see off
That's
in
a
the
desert.
far distance a city.
right? Kind of got this glow about it, like it's going to be their haven from the desert.
I can't help but look at it and think that somewhere along their journey, a giant Shai-Hulud's gonna come out and just eat them.
A giant.
Nice.
What I'm really waiting for is just a whole bunch of those electrical beetles to come around the corner, and you start shooting at them, and all of a sudden it's just charged bolts on your entire screen. It's like, "Rah." And then there's a unique one who's electrical, electrical on top of the normal electrical. So it's just
Lightning enchanted. Oh man, those are the worst.
Yeah.
Most infamous, Rakanishu.
You know, it's really sad that you bring that up because, like I say, I've been playing D2 since they reset the ladder, and I'm currently in Hell Mode Act 2, just inching my way through, and I've had to deal with some of those lightning enchanted beetles.
Yep.
What I find even worse, they'll be cold enchanted, and so when the lightning hits you, somehow it freezes you. I don't even know how that's possible, but it pisses me off greatly.
double deuce action.
Oh, Tremors is a great movie.
I love Trimmers.
We're gonna get a bit of that with the sand lizards. They got concept art of them. We'll get to them eventually. I don't know if they're in the show or not. I don't think they are. They burrow in the sand and travel through there.
Now this one is actually one that we discussed a few episodes ago. We pulled out and took a look at it.
Yeah,
And
this
we
is
were
the
dis-
one I really like to go into detail with, just as far as speculation.
Because we were discussing this as being the origin of the overlords.
Sort of. It's more like the torture chamber of Inarius, and you can see the big fat guy attached to chains in this this opening. I imagine that could possibly be Inarius, because in the middle you have the chains. Around this whole section where you see those broken stubble could have actually just been mirrors all the way
The
around.
mirrors.
Right. Room of
Right.
mirrors.
I loved when I read that story in the Diablo 1 manual. I loved it. It was vivid. It got my imagination